All right, good morning and welcome to Sidelines on this Thursday. Well, it's a Thursday morning, believe it or not. Wow, July 28th of 2022. Rob Brown broadcasting live here from the Red River Ford Toyota Studios in Wynne, Arkansas, where Dudley and Jimmy, it's been since June 6th. Well, last week when we were in Atlanta for Media Days, they did get an inch and a quarter over in Parkin, but we really hadn't seen a morning thunderstorm after seeing them every other day for 3 months. But boy, the farmers and everybody over here, Dudley, over there where you're from in Newport, Harrisburg, Jonesboro, and Wynne, and Vandale, and Cherry Valley, we've been doing the rain dance for a while, but looks like it's coming. We're going to be with you 8 to 10 a.m. Central, as we are every Monday through Saturday, Sidelines. And we've got, again, Jimmy Hodge up in Chicago with us, Dudley Dawson over in Fayetteville with hogville.net. Going to be talking a lot of college football today. Second segment, Gary Harris, Tide 100.9 WVUA TV 23 in Tuscaloosa, will join us. In the top of the second hour, Richmond Weaver checks in from the Southern Conference Media Days. He covers Clemson, and, of course, he's doing that documentary about SoCon, the Super Conference, 100 years. In the fourth segment, Ken Capps, writer for the Football Writers Association of America, met him down in Atlanta at SEC Media Days. This is going to be a great show, folks. And let's go ahead and get started. And Dudley, I want to say thank you so much for joining us here on the new high-tech version with StreamYard. And sorry, that email, there's all kinds of little ways we can get this done, but glad you're joining us. And look, man, Monday we're going to start suiting it back up. I heard a commercial today. KJ Jefferson, a sign of the times, is going to be appearing at a bank over here in Eastern Arkansas. I guess that's part of NIL, but I know Monday the Hogs, or Tuesday, will be suiting it up for practice. And aren't you ready for some football?
Yeah, first of all, what a group of male models here on this thing. I mean,
absolutely.
I've got to believe our female participation is going to go way up now.
Yeah, well,
but yeah, I'm excited. You know, it's been a long time coming. Obviously, you know, a lot of excitement around here about football right now. It hadn't been the case a lot of the years during the last 10 or so, and so yeah, it's ready to get going over here, and it's time.
Well, and I you know, I look at everywhere I go, every grocery store, Jimmy, I'm sure it's that way up there. But everywhere you go around here, there's magazines about the Hogs, your team, your state, your magazine, and people just, you know, again, Chuck Oliver, we, you know, saw him a lot at SEC Media Days. He does a show Monday through Friday, 11 to 1 on Southern Sports Today out of Atlanta in 56 markets in 8 states. And, you know, I think he had as his number 3 quarterback, KJ Jefferson. Like the other one was Hendon Hooker, and, of course, Bryce Young at number 1. I want you to lay out the case, and I agree. I think KJ Jefferson's undervalued. I think 1 interception. I think that was in the Ole Miss game in his last 257 throws, and he's lost about, 15, maybe 20 pounds. Where do you see his role this year? Is it going to be the same as last year, or are they going to add more for him since he's a year older?
Well, I think that you know, they're going to give him the full set of plays. They feel very good about him. I know he continues to feel a little bit disrespected, but I don't think that's that big an issue. You know, it gets you a chip on your shoulder, and that's what he's always played with anyway. But yeah, I think the biggest thing with him is going to be how his receivers come along. He's got a great running back crew. He feels real good about the offensive line. But how are these receivers going to come along? Jaden Hazelwood from Oklahoma, Matt Landers, who started in Georgia and was most recently at Toledo, are joining a lot of the young guys that came back, that are coming back, who were freshmen last year, showed potential but not consistency. So I feel like he feels, in talking to him, really good about what he's got. But again, we just have to see how these receivers come along.
Yeah, and what's the role for Malik Hornby this year too?
Well, he's been told that he has the opportunity to win the quarterback job going into fall camp, and you know, certainly he'll get that opportunity. But I think we all know that KJ is going to come out of there barring any injuries or anything, and they're going to make sure they get him on the field. He's right. If he's not the fastest player on the team, he's right up there at the top. They want to get the ball in his hands. He showed during spring practice, which we got a chance to watch, that he can get behind defenders, that he can run really good routes, and that it's just a situation of getting game experience because he's always played quarterback in high school, and since he's got here at college, he at one point for about 10 days was in the transfer portal. Didn't miss any practice. So Coach Pittman, who said if you get in the transfer portal and miss any practice, you can't come back. They didn't come back, and now it looks like a real good fit. And I know KJ's excited about the opportunity to get the ball in his hands. And so I think that's going to be, the possibility of him being a big play guy for them.
Well, I like that. And Sam Pittman, other coaches ought to do that. And I don't know if they do, but now that we know he does, that's even more reasons to like him. Hey, if you're going to go in the portal and you miss any practices, you can't come back. Smart move on his part. And Hornsby's just so fast. That's why I asked you that, because nobody wants to have the fastest player not on the field. But, again, there's got to be plays and packages, whatever they call it, where he can succeed. But with that kind of speed, I think there will be. Jimmy?
Yeah, Hornsby's just so fast and his athletic ability so obvious. I was curious if you get the idea maybe, or just the vibe that maybe that coaching staff would like to get him in wide receiver sets, maybe 10, 12 plays a game, because again, you don't find athletes like that with that kind of athleticism and speed growing on trees. And we saw him last year at quarterback when he got out in the open field in space. I mean, he's going to make a big play anytime he's in one of those situations, and especially at wide receiver when you're going to have one-on-one situations. I can't imagine the defender's going to have a lot of success in that type of scenario if he's got 3 or 4 yards of space between himself and the defender.
I think that it's probably going to be closer to 50%. I know that might surprise folks, but what they did in the spring, in putting him in different sets, different positions, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't get a direct snap, every once in a while. But he's going to be coming from all different angles in the backfield, coming from all different angles, in terms of running routes. He's certainly a deep threat. So, we'll see. But I wouldn't, be surprised at all if they don't get him out there, up to 40 to 50% of the time.
The reason I said 10 to 12 plays because he is slated to be the backup, right? And, if something did happen to Jefferson and then at the same time Hornsby got nicked up, then all of a sudden you might have to have a very inexperienced player maybe coming in at number 3. So I was wondering if they were considering, that fear. I wouldn't say a fear, but it's certainly a reality, because we know in this league, you never know what's going to happen injury-wise to any player at any position. And on top of that, you don't know what the extent of the injury could be.
Yeah, I think that the one thing that they feel good about, and the reason he'll get out there a little bit more, is because they feel real good about Cade Fortin, who once was a quarterback in North Carolina. He transferred here from South Florida. He's, listed as the 3rd quarterback, but they feel like that he's strong enough and has played enough Power 5 football when he was in North Carolina and played against, obviously, a lot of good teams within South Florida, that he's an adequate backup quarterback if that scenario does happen. I know it's a risk-reward thing. I think the reward outweighs the risk in their minds because Cade Fortin is sitting there, as a quarterback. Now, that is one thing. Other than those 3 guys, there's not a lot of quarterbacks in the room, but they've got a lot of former quarterbacks who are playing different positions now. So if it got to that point, but nobody obviously on that staff wants to get to that point. But again, Cade Fortin from Gwinnett County there in Georgia, where my wife used to teach, is a guy that allows them to maybe think about doing that a little bit more.
Dudley, when you look at this Arkansas team, look at the SEC. Last year, Alabama was like 105th on first down efficiency running the ball, but their passing game was so effective with Bryce Young. I think he had 47 touchdowns, almost 5,000 yards passing against maybe a half dozen interceptions. So it's about efficiency, but the fact that they couldn't run the ball that well on first down, they were one of the very few teams that were able to overcome that. Let's talk about the Razorback running game, because the SEC threw the ball last year more than any other conference in America.
Yeah, I think that is, if you want to look at positions on this Arkansas football team, running back is probably the number one in terms of talent and depth. You've got guys, Dominique Johnson was a guy who was injured during spring practice, but he'll be back and be fine. He was a guy that had a lot of carries last year. You look at, again, 6 or 7 guys there. A.J. Green was a speedster that really didn't get a ton of carries, but was able to do that. Rocket Sanders is probably the guy going into spring practice. Javion Hunt, Rashad Dominion, again, from down there in Georgia. James Joyner, just names that just come. They've got 6 or 7 guys they feel real good about now. The deal is just who's going to get what carries and when. They feel good about the depth on the offensive line as well. So they do feel, and I certainly do as well, that their running game is probably the strongest point of their offense, especially when you include the quarterback who refuses to go out of bounds and tries to run over people as well. I mean, he had over 500 yards and was their leading rusher last year because they split up carries among those other running back guys. But they feel really good about that. I think they'll be pretty good on first down.
You look at Chris Rodriguez for Kentucky that's another one. Eagles Landing Christian Academy, McDonough, Georgia, I-20, just west of Atlanta. He's the leading rusher in the SEC, and he had about 1,327 yards. We look at these numbers. It's almost a tailback by committee, isn't it?
Right. And then, that's oftentimes you don't have enough. Arkansas has plenty, so much that you might even see Rocket Sanders, as he did last year, in some patterns with the other running backs in the game at the same time. They're going to get all their talent out there because Kendall Browse, showed that he's got a lot of offensive creativity during most of the season. So, I think he feels good with what he's got to work with.
Yeah. Jimmy.
We mentioned this before, but last year, especially in the A&M game, and there were some other instances, of course, the 2-point conversion attempt against Ole Miss when they tried the shovel pass that wasn't executed the way they wanted it to be. But they really struggled in those situations. And I thought in the A&M game, and I know you remember this play, was probably late in the third quarter, 4th and 1 at maybe the A&M 17 or 18-yard line. If they convert that, it's most likely they're going to go in and score a touchdown. And they had really dominated the game up to that point. And they didn't make it. And the game really flipped from a momentum standpoint. And instead of the Hogs cruising to a victory, in my mind, all of a sudden A&M, they got some life and they really turned it into a ball game. And in your mind, I've got to think that the Hogs, and I've mentioned it before, are really working on improving that phase of their game and the short yardage running situations.
Yeah, and the thing that it starts with Ricky Stromberger, their center, who's getting All-American, preseason nods, first team All-SEC. He's a guy that's probably going to be their highest draft pick out of the people that are on the team right now in terms of next year. He's the lead guy there, and I think that that offensive line, and I believe Hornsby was in at quarterback when KJ was injured at that point. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, that gave A&M life because Arkansas was about to put the game away at that point and had rallied from an early deficit. But yeah, I think anytime you are something in one, you've got to be able to pick that up. And obviously there are so many teams that try to play power football in the SEC. You got to be able to do that, and you got to be able to stop that as well on the other side of the ball.
Dudley, along that line, let's flip over to defense. Jalen Catlin is back. He missed the second half of last year. As good as he is as a defensive back, you've got to have that big surge up front on the defensive line. Let's talk about that depth, because everybody knows if you want to get to Atlanta, play for the championship, Hogs have done it. They did it in 95, 02, and 06. But you want to get there, that's where it all starts. So let's talk about some of the names. And I know you go back to the first year of Sam Pittman in 2020. The Hogs played a game, I think it was LSU, went down to a field goal at the end that they lost against the defending national champions, and 5 or 6 of their top defensive linemen were out that game with the virus. So somebody is doing a damn good job of developing defensive linemen on that Arkansas front seven, and it's impressive.
Yeah, and they've added, certainly that was in the portal transfer area, was what place that they really hit that hard to. Jordan Dominic from Georgia Tech, Landon Jackson from LSU came in here. They've got a freshman named Nico DeValier here from Arkansas Maumelle, added to the guys that they've got coming back. It's a situation where, those guys may have not been on campus, and you've got guys here that need to be a little bit more consistent that have been here, but all together they feel like they've met their needs there. And that's going to be a situation where they're going to be able to pressure the quarterback a little bit more, which is something they really needed to do a little bit more last year. And also, if you have your secondary and you've got Catlin back there, and you've got linebackers that are coming back, in Bumper Pool, who I think has seems like 700 tackles in the last 3 years. He's about to break the record.
800.
I know it's in the 300. He's about to break the record. They feel good about the other parts of the team, as well as that part of the defensive line improving and being able to put more pressure on the situation. And we'll see, but the potential's certainly there.
Yeah, and you think about this, what it means to have a guy like Bumper Pool come back. I mean, you don't have Grant Morgan, but I always go back to one of my favorite Razorbacks ever is a walk-on out of Searcy. Dustin, they, oh my gosh, Lee, all of a sudden, the walk-on from Searcy, the linebacker. What was his name again? I've drawn a blank. Which one? No, Dacus. Dacus, the linebacker from Arkansas. Weston Dacus. Yeah. And he looked a lot older than a college kid. He looked like he looked like a special ops guy, man, that had been in combat for 5 years. But you want guys like that. Grant Morgan last year, I remember at media days talking to him a year ago, and he's from Greenwood, right outside of Fort Smith. Grew up loving the Razorbacks. No, obviously Bumper Pool's from Lucas, Texas, but guy comes back like this, he's a leader in that locker room. I think that's a coach's dream. And Sam Pittman just seems like he's built this culture. Chad Morris, that I don't think the players had a lot of respect for him. That's just what I could think. But he sure did leave some talent there. And, obviously Traylon Burks has gone on to the NFL. Good for him. Hope he does really well. But I look around this team, everybody's trying to get better. And they got the Cincinnati, that first game, Dudley, Cincinnati had more players drafted, for whatever that's worth, 9 than Alabama, 7 this year. Now, we know they played each other and Alabama won, but let's talk about these first 2 games, Cincinnati and South Carolina. Those are both, good rosters. It's not like you're opening up with Mercer or someone like that. So Hogs, I think it's easier to get your team ready for an opener like a Cincinnati. So I think they're going to come out sky high in game 1.
Yeah, Luke Fickle has done a great job there, and he's got a lot of talent. In the recruiting rankings, they're having another great year in terms of continuing the success of their football program. When you look at those first 2 games, and certainly, your first conference game here at home, going to be 11:30 start. Also, you've got BYU and Liberty, as non-conference finals. And I'm trying to remember the coach at Missouri State. I believe his last name is Petrino, which is going to be a fun day here that week as well. That's an early game as well. I think it's number 3, actually. And So, yeah, I think they've got really good leadership. You talk about Bumper when he was trying to decide whether to come back. Him and Catlin, they both went to Coach Pittman, and Coach Pittman said, they said, we'd like to talk to you. And he said, sure, you can come talk to me. Y'all are coming back, but you can come talk to me, and I'll give you, what the NFL said, but y'all are coming back. Yeah, because he knew how important it was, and he knew they were leading toward coming back. Those were big for our club. In the big scheme of things, you only had like 2 returnees, at positions of power that ended the season in the starting lineup. So, the leadership is there, the culture, and we've talked about this since I've joined the show, the culture being there of guys who want to win, who don't accept losing, which was something that was happening here during the time. You're right, Chad Morgan, and I call him a mathematician a lot because that's, just my take on things. And I know he's back in the college game now, so as a quality control assistant, I think it is. He did leave some talent. His staff did a decent job of recruiting, and some of those guys have really panned out.
Bobby Petrino going to ride a motorcycle into the stadium. I mean, it's just he fell off a motorcycle several years ago, didn't he?
If it was WWE, I'm sure that would happen. But he is going to. I don't think he'll have anything to say about motorcycles, neck braces, or volleyball players during his time here.
Well, I'll say this: the Arkansas folks were pretty damn classy at the Touchdown Club in Little Rock. He spoke to. Look, I'll admit I have a love affair with the state of Arkansas. I mean, I'm over here a lot. Living in Memphis, you can't help it. But look, people we're kidding around. But look, people do stupid things, and he did. We all do stupid stuff. But when that game starts, it's all going to be about football. But you think about when he was at Arkansas, what they had going, and it was scary. And now Sam Pittman is what he's doing different. I think, Jimmy, he's building more of a line of scrimmage program, offensive and defensive linemen, and all that other stuff. Once you do that, Jimmy, don't you think the skilled players will flock to Fayetteville?
Yeah, especially when you've proven that you have the coaching staff that can develop a young quarterback that didn't have much experience, which is where Jefferson was last year. And he came through in flying colors, and now he's, by all accounts, considered one of the top quarterbacks in the league. But what I wanted to ask was regarding these first 2 games, Cincinnati and South Carolina. We all know the year Cincinnati had last year, but they lost a 4-year starter in Ritter at quarterback. And so the Bearcats are going to be, obviously, playing a guy that hasn't had much experience, as certainly in an atmosphere like he's going to see in Fayetteville. And then the following week with South Carolina with I kind of lost my train of thought too with the quarterback from Oklahoma.
He's still
Rattler. There. I think he's still there, but he struggled both years against Texas. And they had to replace him in the game. And I'm just curious, since, he didn't play much the last half of the year, if you're going to see that Arkansas coaching staff maybe put in some wrinkles that they haven't showed on tape to maybe confuse the new Cincinnati quarterback and also give Rattler some other things to think about.
Yeah, and Barry Odom is a guy who is known for doing that. And he's talked about it, had a chance to have a lengthy interview with him this summer. He plans on doing a lot of different things, not only to confuse or try to confuse the first 2 quarterbacks, but as much as he can throughout the year in terms of guys coming from places that you don't think they might be coming. He's going to make a quarterback really think about, the play, what they look like preset and what they are when the ball is snapped. He's been very good about that. I mean, Browse, Coach Odom, and Coach Pittman, he makes a big deal about how the head coach and the coordinators. I think only 8 teams in college football in the past 3 years that have remained together. That tells you something. That number one, there's not a lot of continuity among teams in those three positions, and also those guys have had the opportunity to go other places, but they feel like they're in good situations here. And unless it's a head coaching job at a major university, they're not interested in transitioning sideways. But I think that, yeah, he's definitely, him and Coach Pittman take a walk every day. And Coach Pittman has lost 60, 70 pounds. They get a lot of work done while they're getting their walk in. And, you know, I know that Coach Pittman has a Stevie Nicks playing as well, but they get a lot of good coaching, you know, time between themselves and bounce things off each other. And let's be honest, you know, Coach Pittman has been very clear about this. Having Barry Odom around as he got into his first head coaching job has been a great soundboard for him, and, you know, has helped him learn, you know, things as a head coach, since Coach Odom hadn't been one of those.
Well, look, we're about out of time. I think along the lines of what you say and what Jimmy said, when you get a coach who is a line coach like Sam Pittman, he understands you build the program outward from the line of scrimmage. If you don't have those guys, it's not going to happen. And you look at schools where they've neglected to recruit offensive linemen. I mean, they're gasping for air. So I think, look, Arkansas is not going to sneak up on people. They're going to be circled on a lot of people's calendars. That's what you want your program to be, Dudley. You know that. And go Cardinals. I was in Atlanta last week. We were at the Battery Saturday. Isn't that place incredible?
Yes, I loved it. You know, got a chance to go down there. The Cardinals and the Braves were playing. Did not necessarily like the way that series ended up.
I know.
Since my wife is taught there in Atlanta or in Sewanee, Georgia, and she's a Braves fan, you know, it was a win-win for us. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Look, I got a daughter who lives 1 mile. We walked up to the stadium Saturday and went up to the Battery to that bar, Sports and Social.
Yeah.
and Garden and Gun. I mean, but that is that's where I think we're going to go in the future with football stadium venues. But Dudley, hey man, thank you so much. Love seeing you here on the StreamYard, and look forward to having you on again next week. Let people know how they can follow you, because let me tell y'all something, folks. This guy right here, True Grit journalist, 35 plus years, going to hit every high school in the state of Arkansas and go out and visit them. I mean, places like Wynn over here, the Yellow Jackets, you're coming, aren't you?
Oh yeah, I will be there during the year. So it's there's 200 football playing schools in the state of Arkansas. So it takes a little while to get around to all of them. But and some of them are playing 8-man football now, so it's interesting. But yeah, I'm enjoying working for Hogville.net and Lanny Beavers, who's you know, a great boss, and really, and as well as Fairness Friday, which is the high school aspect of things. As I've said many times, I love the pure sport, pure camaraderie that the high school football has. And I'm glad to be back into watching the game and not necessarily just watching recruits.
Hey, look, we love it, and that's why we love having you on this show, folks. Look forward to next week. Dudley, again, thank you. Have a great day. We're going to take a quick break. Be right back. Go down to Tuscaloosa. Gary Harris, Tide 100.9 WVUA TV, Channel 23 on this Thursday morning. And the rain is coming, folks. We're excited. We'll be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
Okay, Rob Brown back here with you on this Thursday morning. Jimmy Hodge, it's great stuff with the Hogs. And you got to think now, Gary Harris is on with us down in Tuscaloosa. they're going to find ways to get the best players on the field. That includes the fastest one, Malik Hornby. Tuscaloosa, some big news in recruiting this week, Gary. There always is. You sleep for a minute, you're going to get beat. But talk about the latest 5-star safety. Alabama's now got the number 1 and 2 in the country in this class.
Well, I think in Caleb Downs, you've got a guy that, he checks off all the boxes, Rob. I mean, he's an outstanding football player, obviously. That's where it starts in terms of recruiting. You're looking at his ability to help your football team. But terrific student, great family, really well-rounded young man, grounded. I watched his press conference yesterday live from Mill Creek High School there in North Georgia, and just really impressed with him as a person too. And I think for Alabama, it's another statement that in this NIL era, while Alabama is still trying to kind of figure out where it's going with that, and I think there's going to be an announcement coming very soon in regards to the High Tide Collective, that they can still recruit higher players kind of the way they've done it since Nick Saban's been there. I think I've told this, talked about this with you guys before. I mean, it's still the approach of, hey, we can develop you for career on and off the field. We can help you get the degree in the area of study that you want to specialize in. We have an opportunity for you to win a national championship, an SEC championship, and we can develop you for a career potentially at the next level in the National Football League. And when you get here, yes, you can benefit from NIL, but we're not using NIL as a recruiting inducement. And Alabama's on a roll, as you alluded to, Rob. I mean, they have really been rolling in recruiting. And now, if you're interested in these kind of things, and I don't really pay that much attention to it, we know Georgia's going to recruit very, very well. But according to the list I saw, Alabama has 3 of the top 4 prospects in the state of Georgia, that are committed to play for the Crimson Tide. So I do think that this is a statement in recruiting in regards to a lot of people, I think, that thought, anytime Nick Saban comes out against something a little bit, people like to say, well, he doesn't want to deal with it. Oh, this is going to be the end of Nick Saban. He's going to retire. Whether it goes back to the kick six or, RPOs or changes in head coaches being able to go out on the road and recruiting, whatever it may have been, the transfer portal. People say, well, see, Nick Saban doesn't like this. This is going to be, he can't deal with this. And, he just keeps proving that he can deal with anything better than most. That's why he is the coach that everybody else is aspiring to try to build a career like and to build a program like. So, yeah, I think yesterday, even though Caleb Downs had not told a soul where he was going prior to his announcement yesterday, I think the feeling was that he was going to choose Alabama, and he did. And he has drawn comparisons to Mika Fitzpatrick. And from what you watch of him on video, and the way that he carries himself, I think that's very fair. Mika, of course, just signed a mega contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers and is one of the best safeties in the National Football League and was a great player at Alabama. And I think the expectation here is that Caleb Downs can be that type of player and that type of a person here at Alabama. Well,
look, I'm going to throw another comparison too. The number one, these student athletes are making the commitment to go to college. If they didn't care, they wouldn't even go to college. We all remember 20 years ago, Maurice Claret, 2002, had a really good freshman year and flirted with going straight to the NFL, and everything just fell apart. You graduate from law school, Gary. I would hope that on your first or second day in the office, they wouldn't put you in a courtroom on some huge, trial of the century. You got to work your way up. And I think this is my prediction, and this is going to happen. I think you look at Alabama, Georgia, Auburn. They're not all in on this NIL. They're going to find a way to do it because they know that if you just go out there and dump a bunch of money in these recruits' laps, you're going to take away a lot of their incentive. They're not going to be hungry. I think the way to do it is a collective to where you're part of a winning team. Like a company, you get bonuses. If the company doesn't make money, you don't get bonuses. I mean, I've advocated for a long time, you ought to pay the football coaches on a commission basis. I mean, that means if you're doing a good job, you get paid. If you don't do well and you're going to make less money. That's the real world. Well, you can't do it that way. No, it's that nobody has done it that way. They can, they just won't. So I know everybody likes to go back and look at Coach Bryant, the late 60s, when the substitution rules changed. Remember, platoon football had a couple years in a row where they lost 5 games. There were people, Gary and Jimmy, we all remember it. I was very young, but talk to anybody, they'll say, a lot of people, the game has passed Coach Bryant by. Well, then too bad Darryl Royal and Emery Ballard and people like that came up with the wishbone. He puts that in the spring of 71, shows up on a Friday night to start the 1971 season in the Coliseum in Los Angeles, running their old offense. They opened up the game running the wishbone. Not that they won 70-0, they won 17-10, but they adapted. And in 8 of the next 9 years, they won the Southeastern Conference Championship and 3 national championships. So don't say people won't adapt. I think they're just careful. And if a coach is an alpha male and wins a lot, people are damn sure going to listen to him. And if you don't, you're a fool. Jimmy?
Yeah, well, what I wanted to do, Gary, was revisit this success in Georgia over the last couple of weeks because I'm not sure, but I don't know that Saban, since he's been at Alabama, had landed the number 1 ranked player in Georgia since he'd been there. If he had, it's been a while. And so that they had not had, success in getting a lot of those like first, second, or third ranked players. And the fact that they landed 3 out of the top 4 to me was significant because it shows that if you just keep on plugging and you sell your program and over time you prove your success, you're going to get some results there. And it also came to mind that 2 of those players, Justice Haynes and Caleb Downs, are legacy players. Haynes' dad played football at Georgia. Downs, his father played at NC State, and his brother is currently a wide receiver at North Carolina. And in addition to the offensive lineman from Finland that was signed last week, it also kind of put an exclamation point on Nick Saban's ability to close on these recruiting battles, because I think on at least 3 of those players, Alabama was not considered to be in the lead for them for a long time, except maybe for Downs. I know he was Alabama was always high on his list, but sum up what you think about those developments in the last couple of weeks.
Gary, tell you what, hopefully he'll call back. But one thing you're talking about in the state of Georgia, you look at the talent level, Jimmy. There's about 250 Division I players a year that come in, Alabama going in and getting the number 1 player. Does that shock you, Jimmy?
Well, considering what's gone on the last 15 years, yeah, they had not been able to land, the number 1 player, and to get 3 out of the top 4, yeah, I think was a really big surprise. And again, we just in this day and age are finding out that these highly touted recruits, they're making their own decisions. Evidently, they're not influenced as much as we would think about maybe where their dad played, and they want to continue that family legacy at a particular school. So, yeah, it was really surprising to me. And I know also lots of times if you're the number 1, number 2, number 3 ranked player, it's really not that big a deal as things unwind and those players go to college and we find out maybe they weren't as good as their ratings were. But still, though, there is kind of a perception about it to fans on the outside if they're ranked, in the top 5 and so forth. So it does get people's attention, I believe.
Well, I'm not going to say, you remember when Will Anderson came out, that was sort of a surprise. I mean, with when he went to, Georgia didn't offer him. And that's the whole thing about it. So you're saying it's a surprise that Alabama goes in there and gets the number one player out of Georgia. I think Alabama right now is at a point where, again, they're choosing more than they're recruiting. But Kirby Smart, they're not gonna give up on this kid. Gary, you're back with us. This going into Georgia or what Nick Saban has done, going back into Louisiana or going into Texas or going into California. Again, you go back to when Gene Stallings was coaching at Alabama. What percentage of a typical class, 75, 80% would be in-state, or the Mississippi kids, or, some Tennessee kids? That's what you used to see. But now Alabama's roster probably has guys on there from 20 or more states, correct? That be about right? I mean, Jimmy?
Yeah. When Coach Stallings was there, it was primarily Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia oriented, because those were border states. Atlanta, of course, is only a little more than 2.5 hours from Tuscaloosa, and then Jackson is about the same distance, and so that's just at that time where a lot of these Power 5 programs focused maybe a 300 square mile area within their campus. But now, with all the digital technology that's available, the fact that Power 5 games are available for parents to watch from any location in the country, so you can see your son play, I think that makes a difference. And also, you've had especially players from California as early as the 7th or 8th grade go to summer camps at places like Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, Florida, various SEC schools, where those coaching staffs get a look at some of these youngsters at an early age, and vice versa. Youngsters and their parents get an idea of how things are done in the SEC. They learn a little bit about the local culture. So that's really changed the dynamics a lot.
Yeah. Gary, you back with us? Okay, let's do this. Let's take a quick break. We're going to be right back, and with more with Gary Harris, Tide 100.9, talking Alabama and their wide reach in recruiting after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Brown back here with you. And Gary, we're talking about just the reach of Alabama in recruiting. And they've been going down into South Florida and getting a lot of great receivers, like Jerry Jeudy out of Deerfield Beach and Calvin Ridley. Quarterbacks out of California like Bryce Young, the defending Heisman Trophy winner, who could do it again this year. They got Devontae Smith out of Amite, Louisiana. You almost have to say, who are the superstars that are from inside the state of Alabama? And this year, I think there's 22 4-stars and 7 5-stars. It's an incredible year in state. Alabama pretty much is, Auburn, they've got 5 commitments. All of them are 4-stars. Alabama has 2 or 3 5-stars already. And what do you look for them to do in the state this year? Because I know everybody is coming to Alabama, but it's, again, hard to get them out of the state.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it might be a little bit easier now with NIL on the table for some of these programs. I think that, when I was talking with you earlier, I said, Alabama is, looking to put an NIL program in place. And, we got cut off, but you guys had made a point too, that, with Saban, I think you want something that's sustainable. And I think that's what you're alluding to, Rob. Just throwing a bunch of money at the front end in recruiting is not something that's sustainable. So Alabama's trying to get a sustainable program. As far as in the state is concerned, I mean, it is what it is. Alabama's going to do very well. They're going to get most of the guys that they want in state. I just think that's been proven out over 15 years of recruiting with Nick Saban. Now, the loss of Peter Woods, at least for the time being, to Clemson, I think was a hit. The outstanding edge rusher out of Thompson High School there in Alabaster, the program that's become the best program in the state of Alabama, Clipsy and Hoover. So give Clemson credit for that. But, I think that, Alabama is going to recruit at state first. And I think Hunter Osborne, another defensive lineman out of Hewitt-Trussell, is going to announce this coming Monday evening. I think he's going to choose Alabama. We shall see. Of course, Rousseau and James Smith in Montgomery. Those are two that, I think Alabama's going to have to work hard for, particularly Smith. And but at the same time, it's when Nick Saban recruits, he's going to recruit nationally. I mean, he is going to go where he thinks he needs to go to get the football players that Alabama needs to have an opportunity to continue to win. But he's always going to start in state and then work out. And you said it, Rob, this is a great year in state. One of the best years for defensive linemen in the state of Alabama that I've ever seen. So, I expect Alabama to do very, very well overall and very well in state. And if you're recruiting the state of Alabama, whether you're from out of state or you're one of the in-state schools, even Auburn, that when Alabama's involved with a player, that they're going to be difficult to beat. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation.
Oh, especially when you're winning on the rate that they are. Jimmy.
Gary, we lost you earlier, and I don't know at what point you lost me. I was asking you a question about Alabama's success in Georgia the last couple of weeks. Did you get any of that question or at all? Or I just wanted to. Yeah,
I got it. You could not remember the top player in the state of Georgia. They said they got 3 of the top 4 right now with the Downs, Haynes, and Lonergan. No, I think this is at least, to this point, unprecedented success in the state of Georgia. And there is no doubt that Georgia wanted Caleb Downs and Justice Haynes. I don't know that they were recruiting Dylan Lonergan, the quarterback, the same way that Alabama was. But the other two, those are two priority, players for Georgia, just like they were for Alabama. So again, I don't know about all this making a statement stuff. And Georgia's trying to get good football players. Alabama's trying to get good football players. But at the same time, for Alabama to come into Georgia the year after, Georgia won the national championship and get Justice Haynes, whose dad was a, player at Georgia, and then to get Caleb Downs, and I think you were referring to the fact that his dad played at North Carolina State, it's huge for Alabama. And I think it goes to the point too, Rob and Jimmy, that a lot of fans, I think, they miss the boat sometimes in recruiting.
Yeah.
I think a lot of Georgia fans, and of course Alabama's won 6 of them in 15 years, but I think a lot of Georgia fans just assumed, well, we've now won the national championship. We broke through, we beat Alabama to do it. Why would any player in the state of Georgia not go to Georgia that we want? But players don't look at it, and families don't look at it the same way that fans do. Fans, and I'm talking about all schools.
Yeah.
Sports fans would go to their school. They're fans of that school. But for players and their families, you look at it differently. And, you know, whether Alabama had beaten Georgia in that national championship game, you know, I don't know that it would have changed anything in recruiting. And obviously Georgia beating Alabama did not, you know, help them, you know, get a commitment from Justice Haynes or Caleb Downs. So I think immediately, you know, fans just think, well, we won the national championship, we're going to get everybody that we want. And, you know, it's not the way that it goes. And, you know, you move on. Players are looking for situations that fit them the best. And I think that's what Justice Haynes and Caleb Downs both said was, hey, this, you know, we feel like Alabama fits what we want in our college experience. And, you know, whether Georgia had won that national championship game or not, it, you know, wouldn't have changed anything. So I think a lot of times fans just look at recruiting completely different than what recruiting really is all about. It's like when Nick Saban got to Alabama, and we know that, you know, his first year in 2007, they went 7-6. That spring of 2008, you know, Mike Shula had left him a roster that did not have one single player even drafted. Forget first round, didn't have a single player drafted. But Alabama started recruiting lights out because Nick Saban sold opportunity, he sold a vision, and he's been able to continue to recruit at that level. But, you know, your record on the field sometimes is not going to necessarily reap you rewards that next recruiting cycle. I remember when Alabama won the national championship in 1992 under Gene Stallings, and that, you know, that recruiting cycle in February of 93, there was really key players in state that Alabama lost to Auburn, and Alabama fans were like, well, would they go to Auburn now? You know, but it's just different. But to get back to your point, Jimmy, yeah, it's noteworthy that Alabama has gone into Georgia and taken 3 of the top 4 prospects, at least in terms of commitments right now. So, but again, it's a whole different game, recruiting the way that coaches view it, and players and their families view it, as opposed to the way the fans view it.
I tell you what, guys, you're talking about Caleb Downs. Wasn't his dad Gary Downs who played at NC State?
You know, that's probably I'm not sure his name, but I know his dad played there, so that's probably him.
Yeah. When I was in Columbus in the 89, 90, 91 at Channel 3, there was a Gary Downs that played at Spencer, and he would come in the newsroom, and I mean, Roger and Reese, he was on a lot. He was a really good player. He went to NC State, and Spencer was where most of the military kids, right there at the front gate on Victory Drive near there for Fort Benning, when those kids would go anywhere. I think Kentucky's all-time leading rusher, Williams, was from Spencer. But you're right. Your head will spin trying to figure out where these kids are going to go. You got to think about, too, Phoenix City Central, any of the schools in Columbus. Remember, those kids, especially, there are a lot of Army brats. They're from all over the country. So they'll go anywhere. I mean, and Phoenix City Central's got probably 25 or 30 guys on there that'll play college football on that team right now. Look where they're going. Penn State, Clemson, they're all over them. And Auburn and Alabama having to fight for it. And you go back, you're right, Gary. That first year Terry Bowden came in, Auburn's looking, you know, NCAA probation right in the face, and he goes out there and signs 3 of the top 10 players in the state, Marcellus Mostella out of Gadsden, Jesse McCorvey out of Theodore, and Willie Anderson out of Viger and Blunt. You know, how did that happen? Alabama, you know, just won the national championship, but it's usually a year or 2 later. But hey, when Nick Saban went down to Foley and got Julio Jones, that's when it started. Like, holy
yeah,
cow.
It did, Rob, and I'm going to have to go in a minute. But since you brought up Julio, I think that you know, I was covering him yesterday on my sportscast on TV. Of course, you know, getting some sound bites. And I said to some of my interns who already, you know, Julio Jones to them is old news. I mean, they're 22 years old. They were like 7 when he committed to Alabama. But yeah, Julio Jones changed everything for Alabama. Now, do I think Alabama still would have won without Julio Jones? I think they would have. I don't know how quickly, you know, it would have happened, but Julio Jones was a game changer.
Yeah.
Because I think, you know, at that point in time, Alabama was not the school that recruits were trying to, you know, beat their doors down to get a visit to, and it wasn't what it is now. And when Julio Jones committed to Alabama, I think that sent a message to other recruits, to other schools in the SEC and coaches that Alabama is about to be a major player again. And I still think that Julio Jones was the most important single recruit of the Nick Saban era. And I still think, even though he was not a first-team All-American, he only had 15 touchdown catches in 3 years, I think he's the most important player of the Nick Saban era, because I think Julio Jones' status then as a recruit And the fact that he could have called any coach in America and that school would have said, yeah, we'd like to have you. When he chose Alabama, I think it was a game changer. I really do.
Hell yeah. Gary, listen, thank you so much. Great segment. Tell folks how they can follow you, and we'll let you go and do this again next week.
Yeah, I hate we had technical issues, guys, but I always enjoy it. At Gary Harris _ WVOA is my Twitter handle. Tide109.com is the radio station website. WVOA23.com is the TV station website. Of course, Tider Insider TV, a very popular show that I do with Rodney Orr that you can find at WVOA23.com, live streaming all our news and Tider Insider. And of course, Rodney links the Tider Insider show each week to TiderInsider.com. So a lot of different ways to keep up with me. I appreciate it, guys.
You bet. Have a great one. We'll be right back after this break. Richmond Weaver checks in from over in Greenville, South Carolina. Clemson and SoCon after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, hour number 2. Great stuff there with Gary Harris. And Jimmy, I agree with what Gary said about Julio Jones. When Nick Saban went down to Foley and got him to come to Alabama, he was in a lot of services ranked as, that's back, remember our friend Bill King. Bill King and guys like him, Max Howell, Max Empfinger, especially Bill, when he used to be on the big dog, WLAC AM 1510 up in Nashville. They were so into the recruiting, and it was so good. The darker it got, earlier it got dark, the more you could hear that show. But Julio Jones was the number 1 player in the country. He came to Bama. You got guys like Mark Barron out of St. Paul's Episcopal down in Mobile. It just started an avalanche in recruiting. And you say, well, you mean Alabama wasn't getting everybody they wanted? Well, heck, it goes in cycles. You remember they'd had the time with Mike Shula had been the coach for 4 years. And, he was hired in May after 3 months of Mike Price. But the recruiting momentum, the avalanche, the part of Alabama, it gets stronger every year. They're either 1 or 2 every year. Now, A&M got the number 1 class this year. See if they can do that again this year. They're getting off to a slow start, but everybody's still talking about last year. You better be focusing on getting another class in, because like you always quote Nick Saban, thing about college football that makes it special is you've got to replace about 25% of your team every single year. But when you bring in the kind of talent Alabama is, the kind of talent Georgia is, or Clemson, or Ohio State, it's not as hard as it is if you had, say, several bad classes. You can take an off year and blend it in with a really good year with redshirting and all. And now you throw in the portal, anything can happen. But that's where it all began. And Jimmy, I'm not surprised at all that Alabama, they're going into Georgia and doing what they've done in Louisiana in a lot of years under Nick Saban.
Well, I thought Nick Saban sent a message within a week after he arrived in Tuscaloosa when he went down to John Curtis and visited Joel McKnight, who was the running back that ended up going to USC, but I believe he was the number 1 ranked player in the country. And I think Saban wanted to let everybody know that even though this was really late in the recruiting cycle and Alabama wasn't going to be able to salvage much out of the class, which At that time, the big signing date was the first Tuesday, I believe, in February, but he was going to let people know that they were going to make a run at everybody that they could. And the fact that McKnight was willing to even accept a visit from Saban was a big deal in recruiting circles back then. So it just gives you an idea of, the power and influence that Saban has and how much obviously importance to this very minute that he puts into recruiting.
Yeah, and Gary alluded to the fact that April of 2008 draft, no Alabama players were taken. Since then, I think the numbers are like 124 with 41 first-round draft picks. Yeah, that's why these kids, they don't care where they are. They'll go recruit them, and they're going to get a visit. They're going to get inside. They're going to eat dinner with mom and dad, with the family. That's what winning does. And you look at a program. Look at Auburn. Okay, they got another commitment yesterday. They got 5 commitments. They're all 4 stars. 3 or 4 of the kids are in-state kids. This one's out of Florida, but you've got to just keep plugging away. But you know what changes everything? Get out there and get some wins. We talked about this yesterday. Zach Calzada, he's good enough to give Auburn another 3 or 4 first downs in every game. And as Stat Tiger says, each first down translates to about 1.5 points in a game. Okay. So you get an extra 4 first downs. That's a touchdown. You start winning those games that you're losing by 2 and 3 points. And it's also having those players coached up to have field awareness, knowing that don't go out of bounds, fall down, do whatever. I mean, technically, isn't the ruling, we're going to have Steve Shaw on, the coordinator of NCAA officials, next week, and we're going to ask him this one. But if your forward progress is stopped in bounds, okay, and then you're dragged out of bounds, that should not stop the clock. And that's not, I'm curious. You go back to the Iron Bowl last year. Forward progress for Tank Bigsby, was it stopped? Because if it was, why'd they stop the clock? But you know what? That's why you never want to get into those situations there at the end of the game where it comes down to the referees having to make that call. Don't put it in their hands. Never put yourself in a position to fail. And you know what? Your record is what it is, but you're just like in basketball. Remember, was it Chris Webber that threw the ball to the opponent in the national championship game? I mean, okay, it's a mistake. People make mistakes, but that's a big mistake. That's like a pilot turning off the engine at 40,000 feet, with 500 passengers on board. This isn't training when you do a stall.
Well, Weber called a timeout when they didn't have one. But what a lot of people forget is when he got the rebound off the missed free throw, he drug his pivot foot like 8 feet before he put his dribble down, and the referee didn't call it. So they should have never even gotten to the point of where he called the extra timeout. But in that particular play, though, on forward progress, that's one of those ones where you only have maybe one defender involved, possibly 2 trying to tackle a guy, and at going full speed like that, I don't think many referees are going to consider that the guy's forward progress is stopped. I think it happens in more cases where there are multiple tacklers involved and a runner is trying to break through, and it's obvious he can't go anywhere. But again, that's one of those things, though, that because there's so much more passing now that maybe they wouldn't even consider a rule like that in order to speed the game up. But again, that's one of those areas, again, that are always visited every year to try to speed the game up. Like, for example, when they adopted the NFL play clock, as soon as a guy went out of bounds, they didn't wait until the ball was thrown back to the umpire to spot the ball down. As soon as that guy goes out of bounds, that play clock starts for the next play. And you've got to get into that huddle for the teams that huddle anymore. But you got to, be aware that when that play clock starts, and then you got to be ready to, to run another play. So there's all kinds of interesting rule changes I think that we're going to continue to see every year, and it's really interesting how the game just continues to evolve, because there's things going on now that 10 years ago you would have never imagined. Hardly anybody huddles anymore.
Yeah, the sugar huddle or something like that. But no, that goes back just what I'm saying. I mean, and that's why we're going to get Steve Shaw. He is the coordinator of officials. Explain it. But yeah, when there's one guy, and I've seen it before where it works against you. When you have your running back is driving and fighting for extra yards and moving a pile of people, and they blow the whistle and blow the play dead. So
I'll give you Rob. I'll give you the classic example of that very play you described. Was Tennessee, Alabama, 2009. Alabama's up 12-3 with like 3 minutes left. They are in total control of the game, and Mark Ingram has been hit, and there are literally 8 tacklers there that he is continuing to try to get away from. And I'm really stunned at how they did not blow the whistle on that play in regard to forward progress. But instead of just going down, because up to that point, Tennessee couldn't move the ball at all. And he fumbles, and Tennessee goes down and scores, recovers onside kick. And now you got an undefeated 2009 Alabama national championship team that came very close to losing because of a play like that.
Well, Terrence Mount Cody blocked that field goal at the end of the game. It's amazing a guy that weighed 400 pounds could jump like that. That's a hell of an athlete, and you're right. But that's what I'm saying. You got your forward. How do you know the forward progress? When and Jimmy, you've been on the sidelines. You played college football. I mean, I've been down there as a reporter or working, for ESPN or whatever in college, whatever. It doesn't change. There's so much going on. That's why. Coach Dye was right. Football is a 60-minute game. Damn it, go out there and take care of business, and don't let it come down to the last few seconds. If you just be dominant, okay? You get down there to where it's judgment calls. They're human beings, okay? So that's why it's going to be really important. I'm looking forward to hearing, what Steve Shaw says about that, because that Mark Ingram play. You get these really strong running backs. I actually saw a play one time, and it wasn't like a spearing or anything. It was Andre Bruce hit a player in the 1984 Auburn-Cincinnati game so hard, they called a penalty on Andre Bruce. But it was nothing illegal. It wasn't a face mask. It wasn't clothesline or anything. So what we're seeing now in college football, these athletes that are coming in, especially the skill players, they're light years ahead of where they were 20 or 30 years ago, because they've been doing all the reps, going on these 7-on-7 camps, Jimmy. And IMG, I'm not a fan of IMG. What does it say when you hear that the University of Florida this year is getting their first ever football player from IMG? And I don't even think he was there but for one semester. I don't like narcissism. Narcissists are people, you see them on TV, see them on podcasts, you hear them on the radio. They write their own story right in front of the whole world, one lie after another. Okay. I don't like IMG because it's not about the team. It's all about me. Sure, you got to take care of yourself, because if you're not in good shape, you can't help yourself or anybody around you. But I'm just not a fan of IMG. And I'd like to track IMG players, because they go down there and they think because they're there being coached and tutored by these coaches, they're automatically better than the other players. There's nothing like being a high school senior. You only do it once in your life. And I think right now, after 3 years, if you went and surveyed guys that have left, and they've been doing it for 30 years, they all wish, I've read it. You have too. They all wish, I wish I would have stayed my 4th year, but that lure of the money and the fame, it's hard to turn away. But you look at when, Cleveland Farrell and Dexter Lawrence came back for Clemson in that 2018 national championship team that beat Alabama 44-18 out in Santa Clara. Why in the world was the national championship played in a city like San Francisco? Can you explain? Well, yeah, I can explain it. They also have What do they charge the Pac-12, Jimmy? $8 million a year for office space in San Francisco. I'm at least that new commissioner is going to have them work remote or just go somewhere else. Go to
Larry Scott was making $5 million to run the conference into the ground. $5 million a year.
Yeah.
And
so,
they do bidding though on those national championship sites in football, as far as where the 2 semifinal locations going to be, and then the championship game. And I think there's a maybe 4 or 5 year window in which they decide the locations for that 5-year period, and then it's I think open bidding, and then maybe 3 years ahead of the next cycle they start bidding again. So again, lots of times they want to give it to a particular area of the country just to see how it goes. But like, golly, Indianapolis, I mean, they do a great job with everything. But man, when that wind chill's 10 below and you're walking to the stadium, man, from the parking lot and that type of thing, or you're waiting outside in the line for 30 minutes, that is not a good deal. I don't know many people there that wanted the national championship game to return to a cold weather city.
All right, I'm with you. Now, look, for the college football national championship, Miami, that's a no-brainer. New Orleans, Atlanta, and we'll say, Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, but it's Indiana. It's January. I guarantee you it's going to be cold. Atlanta, when I was there last week for SEC Media Days, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, they're doing a lot. I mean, that thing's 5 years old, 6 years old. They're already renovating it. All right. It just, time flies. But you've got, CNN Center there, the aquarium, the College Football Hall of Fame. There is so much, Centennial Park. There is so much right there for the foot traffic. But again, I'm with you on the Final Four. San Antonio, New Orleans, and the other city I think you said was Indianapolis, correct?
San Antonio, New Orleans, Indianapolis, just because of the history of basketball there, and you can walk to everything. But in football, I think they're pretty, because Texas is the biggest high school football state in the country, and it's literally in the center of the country. Obviously it's in the Sun Belt, but it's in the middle, east-west wise. Then I think Phoenix has done a good job. The stadium's actually in Glendale. I think the Rose Bowl has to be part of it. I mean, that Georgia-Oklahoma game, are you kidding me? What a setting to have a game like that. Atlanta, and then Miami, I think, and New Orleans. I mean, you stay with that basic core of locations and you can't go wrong.
Yeah. Hey, Richmond Weaver is texting me. He is trying to call in. Again, he's at the Southern Conference Media Days up in Greenville, South Carolina. Jimmy, trivia question. Those mountains, those beautiful mountains that you see when you're at the Rose Bowl, are the San Gabriel Mountains. Am I correct?
You are correct.
Okay, you are correct, sir. All right. You know what, Jimmy? I think San Antonio, too, it's the food down there. You got the Alamo, you got the River Walk and all. And it's just built for fans to come to an event. And Atlanta has done a better and better job of doing that. And you go to Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. Yeah, those are great venues. And speaking of media days and all, next year we're going to be up in Nashville. You talk about a city that is exploding. Williamson County, right next to Nashville, has got the highest net income per capita of any county of the 95 counties in Tennessee. They're just pushing people. It's moving further and further. And Jimmy, you remember let's say Clarksville. Basically, Clarksville to Nashville is just one long string of lights. It's like, you go from Boston down to DC. It's just when you fly over it at night, you can see nothing but one string of lights from outer space. It's not like the middle of the country, but, and I'm anxious to hear, as we talk about the ACC, they had their media days last week, and Jim Phillips, what did Franz Beard, our good friend GatorbaitMedia.com, say? Bless his heart. That's what you say in the South when someone just bless his little heart, delusional up there. Like what was that Hoover in Animal House when they had the parade when the 10,000 marbles and everybody, he goes, no need to panic here. No, I mean, look, ACC basketball, the best conference, the best brand in America. Last year, people thought they were down. They still had 3 of the Elite 8 teams. Miami did it with 4 guards, but they got to get this football riddle solved. And now all the, people running around with their hair on fire about conference expansion, that's been, subsided somewhat. Notre Dame, again, because they're Notre Dame, is going to do and can do whatever the hell they want, Jimmy. I don't look for them to do anything anytime soon, but a lot of the people in the national media, sentimentalist or whatever, are going, well, they get Stanford to come into the Big Ten, and then they've already got these rivalries, with Purdue and Indiana, or Michigan State and Michigan and all these around them. But then I think about the SEC, Greg Sankey, Jack Swarbrick, the AD, who lives in Indianapolis, yet is the AD up in South Bend at Notre Dame. I'm not saying it's a sure thing, but boy, it would open up a lot of recruiting doors for Notre Dame. And again, the Catholic Church is experiencing its largest growth anywhere in America. It's in the South. A lot of kids.
Yeah,
I know.
Well,
they love
it's going to be one of those two conferences. It's going to be either the Big Ten or the SEC, because just financially, they're just in another planet from everybody else right now. They have the most brand names. They generate the most inference from a football standpoint. And people have to remember, this is a football generated move. And that's why the ACC's really worried, because how long are Clemson and Florida State and Miami, from a college football standpoint, going to be satisfied with splitting $32 million when in the 2 leagues I mentioned, when these new TV contracts are renegotiated, it's going to be $100 million each. So it's going to be a tough slog going forward for the ACC in football.
It is. And Richmond Weaver is on with us right now. Richmond, I know you are busier than a one-legged man in a kick fight and more nervous than a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs or the front porch of Cracker Barrel. How are you, man?
I am doing fantastic, gentlemen. Yes, and I am so sorry that I was a little jammed up this morning, but I'm in Asheville, North Carolina.
Asheville,
for
okay.
the Southern Conference
Football
Media Day. So it's been a whirlwind last week down in Atlanta, where I saw you, Mr. Brown, at the SEC, and then up in Charlotte later that week for the ACC kickoff. And now here, another week has passed by, and we're almost into August. So when we say it's July 27th, 28th, whatever the date is now, it's hard to keep up.
Yeah, no.
That basically means September, though.
Yeah.
So we know August is going to go by so fast. But it's great to be back with you guys, and I apologize that a little bit of hiatus for the past few weeks, but that's the way summertime is, a little crazy, but there's a lot of excitement that's obviously going on. And even here in the FCS world, that there's a lot of excitement that this is an opportunity where some teams here in Southern Conference can win a true football championship. And there's some talented teams here. So it should be a good one. But obviously, I think everybody's really more focused on the big boys, the Power Five, and what's going to happen as we're in uncharted territories, it seems, in terms of some of the seismic shifts that are happening in college football and how that's going to have a domino effect for college athletics. It's a real different time within the world of college sports right now that we haven't seen. And, it's great to be part of it, though. I'm excited for what lies ahead in the future, to be honest with you.
Well, look, I got to tell you, and I'm going to speak for Jimmy too. FCS, Southern Conference, damn right it matters. I love college football, college sports in all 50 states, man. I am all for it, and it does need to matter. And they can play for a true championship. If we get to that point, that's a win-win for everybody. So I'm glad. And look, I know for people, I'm not a director. Move over, Cecil B. Mills. I'm looking forward for Richmond Weaver's debut. The red carpet. Yes. the red carpet, boiled peanuts, cold beer. Come on now. I'm ready to see your documentary, but people that like Norman Jetmanson and David Cruz, we met them back in late April when they debuted Sewanee 1899 Unrivaled.
Mm-hmm.
That was a 2-hour documentary, took 6 years to produce. And having seen some people do documentaries over the past in my life, I truly appreciate and respect the hell out of what you do. And I know why you've been bit. We love having you on the show. You bring a lot of energy. You are the pride of Smyrna, Georgia, along with my daughter, Mallory. So it's just, I got to tell
sir.
you got to love it. But let's talk. I know we're going to have a limited time and you got to get back in the meeting. Tell us about ACC Media Days real quick. What was the takeaway from there? And Jim Phillips, you got to get somebody that understands what he's up against. Do you feel like he is there?
Well, the elephant in the room is what Jim Phillips did not say. And I think that's the biggest issue from a lot of people, that when you're taking over a conference commissioner, especially when you're taking over from somebody who was there for a long time with Commissioner Swafford, obviously knowing what he tried to do there in the ACC and some of the changes throughout the years that they had with some additions, et cetera. But I think the thing that struck people the most is that Jim Phillips, in all honesty, he talked in circles. That's all it was. There was no any type of true direction. And I think right now, and I guess there's also a part of it, what does he really have to say in terms of, does he even know what they're doing right now? So I think it's a part of, they're trying to figure it out. I think the Southern Cal UCLA move caught a lot of people by surprise, and it's made everybody quickly realize, okay, we better get things really in order. And you can't be on the defensive. You got to be on the offensive and be proactive. And I just don't think the ACC has a plan right now. That's the problem, because there's so many things that they would have to unravel based on their multimedia rights deal at this point. And for them to be able to do that, I mean, that's a lot of big dollar figures and, you know, big checks that would have to be written for them to be able to do that. And so I think they're just in scramble mode to be able to figure out how to hold on to some of the core members of the ACC right now before one of the other conferences, the Big Ten or the SEC, it's one of those two that are going to come calling to a Clemson, to a Florida State, to a Miami, to a North Carolina, and try to pull them out of the ACC. And if people think that it can't happen, I mean, we're already seeing it. It doesn't matter. Some way they will be able to figure things out. And you can even just look back at the Southern Conference in 1953,
yes, when
you had the situation where Clemson, Duke, Maryland, North Carolina, NC State, they all pulled out of the Southern Conference and formed the ACC in one day. It was that quick. Now, obviously, things are changed just in terms of contracts and how things are written today and the dollar figures that are involved. But at the end of the day, we've seen it. Somehow they'll figure it out. If it means an opportunity for more money, they're going to figure it out. I promise you.
Yeah, they will. And you know, one thing,
Richmond,
100 years ago, the Southern Conference was 23 teams. So we've been there before, and we may see it again. Jimmy?
Richmond, what was the mood among media members and then administrators and coaches that you encountered at the ACC Media Days? Because it just seemed like that this 2-week dalliance with the Pac-12 trying to form some kind of merger with them, which to me made little or no sense. It just seemed like it was a Hail Mary. And then when they announced after 2 weeks that, they were going to give up on that, what's left for the ACC other than Phillips, saying in the past that they're holding on to the hope that they can get Notre Dame to join the conference if they choose to no longer be independent. But when you just look at dollars and cents, that makes no sense. It's clear that would either end up with them going to the Big Ten or the SEC. So again, what was the mood there and about that little what appeared to be Hail Mary and what lies ahead?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that the mood was more of questioning, what is the ACC going to do? And there was almost a little bit of sense that, are we seeing the beginning of the end of the ACC? Because I just don't know how some of these teams, when you're looking at some of these dollar figures, even if you bring in Notre Dame, does Notre Dame bring in that type of cachet, so to speak? And I know they're a national brand. I get all of that. And apparently the contract is written that due to Notre Dame, all the other sports that are currently ACC members, that if Notre Dame is going to join a conference, it has to be the ACC. Well, again, that contract that's not even worth the paper that it's probably written on, just based on, they'll figure out a way to get out of that if that's completely accurate. But I think right now the Hail Mary for the ACC is just trying to hold on to everybody. That's it. That's all they can focus on right now, because who wants to go to the ACC right now? Nobody does. Even Notre Dame doesn't want to. Notre Dame, they're saying they don't want to go to any conference, but I'm not certain that's accurate either. But right now, with the disparity in dollar figures and these media rights deals, the ACC is just in a world of hurt, and they're going to have to renegotiate some type of deal. And maybe it's that they can try to do that with Notre Dame being added on the football side. Maybe that's the tipping point, or the item that they can say there's been a change in the conference. Or can they go try to add somebody, and that's a change in the conference, so that allows them to renegotiate some type of deal. But it remains to be seen. But right now, I think the ACC is behind the 8 ball, to be honest with you.
Richmond, do you think, I know we just got another minute or so left. Ken Capps is on with us, Football Writers Association of America, and Ken will be right with you. But Richmond, when you go and you look around the ACC landscape, yeah, you got some attractive brands. Let's focus on Clemson. We had Davis Babb, the CEO of IPTAY, on the show about a month ago. Well, it was in about mid-June. And he said that the fiscal year for IPTAY ends June 30th, and their goal was to raise $78 million. Hadn't talked to him since then. I don't know if they hit that number, but that's a big, big number. Most of the SEC schools are somewhere in the 30 to 40 million in fundraising. I'm not talking about what they get from the conference office. Financially, Clemson is strong, and if something happens to the ACC, everybody is going to be beating the door down to get Clemson. I'm thinking the SEC. We've already got South Carolina, and you could say, well, bringing Clemson in is like bringing sand to the beach, but it's beautiful sand, and it's rich sand, and it's the Gulf Coast, not the ocean, but the Gulf of Mexico. If you call it the ocean, you're a Yankee. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do, yes. But I do know, yes, obviously Clemson's very attractive, but don't forget, Clemson's not the only attractive entity and member in the ACC. There's others, and I think a lot of these conferences are just trying to figure out. I think it's more of based on the contractual issues right now, more than anything. And I think it's going to be more of lawyers that are going to be determining what happens and how fast that happens, more than the commissioners or presidents at this point. Okay.
Richmond, I know you got to get back in those SoCon meetings. And I used to fly into Asheville, went to camp in the summers in beautiful Brevard, North Carolina, the Biltmore Estate. I love Asheville, one of the coolest towns around. But tell people how they can follow you and when the documentary will be released, because we're all fired up about it.
Yes, we have hit some delays, but we are going to be releasing the documentary, which is called Super Conference, How the SoCon Changed the World of Sports, a 5-episode docuseries, and that will be debuting in late November and carrying over for, throughout the year, because there's so much history in the SoCon, from football to basketball, so there's so much to cover. But I will make sure all of you gentlemen are up to date on that, and anybody can follow me at Richmond Weaver on Twitter.
All right, look, let's do this again next week. Thank you so much. Have a blessed day.
Thanks, gentlemen.
All
Talk to
right.
you later.
You bet. Okay, great stuff there. Now let's head down to Dallas, Fort Worth, as they call it, the Metroplex. But you're Ken Capps. I met you at SEC Media Days last week, Football Writers Association of America. Hey, folks, these guys been around a long time. You'll see those initials in all caps, FWAA. These are the hardcore True Grit journalism. And Ken, we're talking some college football, your takeaway, from SEC Media Days, but just the big picture, the national landscape of college football. We start practice on Monday. No more NIL, no more portal talk. Well, there'll be some, but it's really about depth charts, X's and O's, and hustle. How are you?
Well, Rob, I'm great, and it was great talking to you last week at SEC Media Days. And, before that, I was at Big 12 Media Days, and yesterday was Conference USA Media Days. And I tell you, what I've learned over the last week or so is that the only conference that is sitting pretty right now is the SEC. Everybody else is like your previous caller just said, is behind the eight ball. Everybody's real nervous about getting picked off as far as more schools going away from their conference, or more schools moving to another conference. And I was just really taken last week at SEC Media Days in Atlanta, when the commissioner, Stanky, was coming up and introducing every coach, and he was, just joking around with everybody and giving everybody, trivia about the coaches, like Arkansas, Sam Pittman, he has a jukebox in his office, and Missouri's coach Drinkwitz has the largest collection of Air Jordans in college football. And so, if that's all you've got to worry about in the SEC, I think you're doing pretty good.
I think that's a great point. Hell, I asked Eli Drinkwitz. I know he's from, I think he's from Alma or maybe Fort Smith, but I asked him, I said, have you ever thought about what it would be like if you could tap into that St. Louis Cardinals fan base, their passion? It's the second winningest baseball in America, and he said, well, who's first? I said, the Yankees. I said, the Yankees have 27 World Series. The Cardinals have 11. But I said, what if you could get that same passion in the stands over there in Columbia from Missouri? And he said, it's a good question. He said, the Chiefs have won Super Bowls. The St. Louis Rams did, the St. Louis Blues, and on. We're the only team in the state of those, the high-profile programs, college or pro, that haven't done it. And I think Eli's a very smart coach, and I think he's building a wall around his state. I don't know if they wish they were still in the Big 12 or they wanted to be in the Big 10 or whatever, but they've, what, Ken, I'll say this before I go to Jimmy. I'd love to see college football, healthy all over the country. You get to travel all over the country. And, yeah, you're right. SEC right now, they're the leader in the clubhouse, and it didn't happen by accident. Last 50 years, 19 national championships, the Big 10, 2.5. And it's, we've had 8 different teams win the national championship in the last 15 years. 12 different teams win the Super Bowl the last 15 years.
Yep.
It's a great, what I love the most? We're about to start playing the games, and all that other stuff goes out the window. I hope, for the most part.
Well, and I think that the other thing that just struck me, Rob, and I wanted to mention this, is because I live in Dallas. Texas OU played here every year on the second Saturday in October. Everybody without a doubt said in SEC Media Days that they welcomed Texas and OU whenever they come over to the SEC. And I tell you, that's not the vibe that's going on over here in Texas and Oklahoma. The vibe over here is that whenever Texas and OU get over there, that they're going to be universally disliked and booed. So we're going to see how that's going to play out once they start playing in SEC stadiums.
I will say this in the interest of full disclosure, I'm an Auburn grad, but I love them. I love all the schools. I don't hate any of them. They are welcome. And I mean, listen, I've been to Austin. Jimmy has. I've been all over Eastern Oklahoma. Hadn't been to Norman, but I'm bouncing off the walls to get them in here. I've grown up watching them. I think it's going to be so much fun. It is bringing gold to the bank, bringing those two brands in here. Jimmy,
Oklahoma's going to be welcomed much. Oklahoma is going to be welcomed much more warmly than Texas is, because Oklahoma, for all these years, they remind SEC fans of an SEC program. I've been in Oklahoma quite a bit. Their fans are very similar. Their culture is very similar. Whereas with Texas, it's a little bit more elitist, and I think that's what you're referring to. And if they don't tamper that down when they come to the SEC, they'll have some struggles fitting into their new league. But I do think, though, that by joining the SEC, though, it's going to be great for the level of talent they're going to be bringing in. And it's not to say that they don't get good players now, but they just haven't been really unified since Mac Brown left. And we all know about their power structure, their boosters, how wealthy they are, and that the perception that there are way too many Chiefs and not enough Indians. So that's been hampering their progress. So it is going to be a really interesting dynamic, but I think Texas is going to come up to speed pretty quickly, because now they're going to be able to sell the same message that A&M is. You're going to be playing conference games in unbelievable locations when you go on the road. You're going to be up against the best players every week when you play a conference game. Just look at the NFL draft boards every year. And it's going to allow you to be the best player that you can develop into, and yet you're going to be able to go to school close to home. So I think it's going to be a real powerful message, and I think they're going to do a great job in recruiting.
Well, and I think, I think that Sark, coming from Alabama and really with the blessing of Coach Saban. I mean, Coach Saban could say nothing but good things about Sark last week at SEC Media Days. Sark has already made huge gains in recruiting, and of course, as you know, getting Arch Manning here in the last few weeks has just opened the floodgates at Texas as far as other 4 and 5 stars that want to come play at Texas. But guys, Texas has gotten 4 and 5 stars for years, and they've been flops. So it's got to be also a question of developing these players like they get developed in the SEC, so they do become future stars.
Ken, we've talked about this a lot, and Jimmy's pointed out in great detail. I want to give him credit for that, which I always think is the most important thing to do. And that is when they started having those classes in February. Nickname for Mac Brown was Coach February, but they would get the class all lined up, and those kids would go out there their senior year and, really fall short of expectations. But the state, we have Olin Buchanan on a lot with us every week from TexAgs.com. And I got to meet last week Kirk Bowles, who's Austin American. There's so many Austin American statesmen, great writer. There's so many great writers who cover Texas football, but high school reigns supreme over college and pro football. That's how big it is. Close to 2,000 football playing high schools in the state, 400 Division I players a year. Everybody in the country is coming to Texas to get players. But I'm with Jimmy. They you want to go on the road and play in Manhattan, Kansas, or Lawrence, Kansas, or Ames, Iowa, or do you want to go to Baton Rouge? Do you want to go to Athens? Do you want to go to Tuscaloosa? What do you want to do? These great cathedrals of college football. Not that Darrell K. Royal Memorial Stadium with the escalators in the cathedral, or Kyle Field in College Station didn't. But now it's going to be interesting. But A&M's got an 11-year. By the time they get in, it'll be a 13-year head start on their in-state rival. But you know what's going to happen? Texas right now, they're going wild in recruiting. But again, Ken Capps, here's the fact. Marcel Darius out of Huffman High School, Birmingham, defensive lineman for Alabama. When he hit Colt McCoy in the Rose Bowl 2009 national championship game, 11 of the last 12 seasons, Texas has lost 4 games or more. I think that's gonna be the standard of how low you can go. But then when they get in the SEC, I'm with you. I think the recruiting will be better, but you still got to develop the talent. A great recruiting class left undeveloped is like leaving $1,000 worth of the finest groceries in your trunk for a week in the summer. It ain't gonna end well.
That's so right. And I was at that game. I was at that Rose Bowl when that happened, and you could just hear the giant sucking sound go out of the stadium when Colt left that game. And he tried. So this is a little known fact. He and his dad went underneath the stands in the Rose Bowl, and he was practicing throwing, trying to come back. And there was just no way he could come back. And you're so right that Texas fans to this day point to that play against Alabama as the fall of Texas football and the rise of the Alabama dynasty. You're 100% right.
Yeah, and remember, in that game with 5 minutes and 43 seconds to go was 27-24, and Alabama got a scoop and score inside the 7. But it was a close game, even with Blaine Gabbert Gilbert, the quarterback, came in as a freshman. That's how close it was. But
yep,
and Gene Chizik said about when he was there after being at Auburn, he was there in 2005, obviously in 2006, and they won the national championship. Mac Brown rides around in a golf cart and entertains gazillionaires, as far as Gump calls them, gazillionaires. But just the wealth and just people coming in every day. What do you need? Got it. I mean, there's competition over how much everybody can do to help. It seems to me that if Texas gets everybody rowing in the same direction and has one voice, like what Nick Saban does at Alabama, what Kirby Smart does at Georgia, then I think you'll see Texas return, because they're still the 4th or 5th winningest football program in history. So again, they've got the muscle memory. They just got to have the success. I think they're showing signs in recruiting that the SEC deal is ringing true. I mean, kids are responding.
Well, and I tell you here's what I couldn't believe last year is that here's Sark wins the national championship with Saban at Alabama, takes over at Texas. They go 5-7, and there are there are players on the team that, quote unquote, don't buy into the program, quote unquote. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, your head coach was the offensive coordinator for all these great players and won the national championship, and you don't want to buy in to that? What's wrong with you people? And of course, he had to end up, and he said he was going to do this, and by golly, he did it. Sark had to basically get rid of, I mean, that's politically incorrect, but it's the truth, had to get rid of about 35 players on his team.
Good.
Got 35 new guys on his team, whether they're recruits or from the transfer portal or somewhere else. But he's got 35 new guys this year on his team that, just like you're saying, that he's hoping are going to all pull in the same direction instead of pull against him like many of his guys did last year.
Hey, let me tell you something. We ain't PC by any means. And I'm going to tell you what, if I'm the head coach, here's what the speech is. Gentlemen, it's my way or the highway. Questions? I didn't think so. Jimmy? Jimmy?
Yeah, well, again, it was a big change from Tom Herman. And I think a lot of the Texas faithful were surprised by the fact that following the job he did at Houston in only 2 years, that Herman wasn't able to come in there and really provide that energy and then just create immediate success, because he made it public that he wanted his coaching staff to be the best recruiting staff in the country, and yet they just didn't seem to just come up with the right mix of things that you needed to do, as far as maybe getting players that could play together as a unit, because we all know that elite high school players are used to having been the best player on their team ever since they've been maybe in the 6th or 7th grade. And then when you get to the Power 5 level, and now you're going up against players that are as good or as talented or as athletic as you are, or even more so than you are, you have to make mental adjustments to that. And it just seems like that with Sark coming from the Saban tree, that he's much, I think, better positioned to be able to vet these players. And when they visit their high schools, talk to not only the coaches, but like teachers, janitors. What kind of person are they when they're just with one people, and will they fit into our program? Will they be great teammates and that type of thing? Are you getting the impression that Sark and his staff are doing a good job at that and getting in future Longhorns to Austin?
I really do. I really, really do. And of course, he's got guys on his staff too that are great recruiters because they've been at the Texas high school level, and so that really, really helps as well. But the one person that's still left over from the Tom Herman era, and I'm so glad that he stayed behind and has stayed with Texas, and that's Bijan Robinson. Bijan was recruited by Tom Herman, and he's had every chance in the world to leave Texas. And every school in the country would want him, but he is focused. He stayed at Texas. He talked to Sark. He stayed with Sark. Now Tashard Choice is the running backs coach there. They are just getting along as great as they can. Bijan was talking about him the other day. It just said he means the world to him. And now he's a Heisman Trophy candidate. So, and I do think that Sark brings a different kind of attitude in recruiting. But in Texas, you've still got to have that good old boy Texas recruiting too. Just because, just like you said, everybody comes into this state to recruit, and it's kind of odd when Texas goes outside to get guys from Florida or kids from California. It's not that unusual for Oklahoma, because there's not that many recruits in Oklahoma, quite frankly. But of course, Oklahoma comes to Texas a lot too to get recruits. But Texas really likes to focus on getting the vast majority of its recruits from Texas, and build a wall around Texas, if you will. But I think with Sark, they're not going to be afraid to go outside and get some of the bigger recruits too. And I think that Sark brings that kind of outside attitude, that kind of California attitude in a way, that kind of national attitude that I think Saban brings as well. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would. And I wanted to ask how you felt that Quinn Ewers developed during spring practice, because, we all know quarterback is the most critical position in college football. But also, when you talked about Texas not being the same since that Rose Bowl national championship game against Alabama, I think it should also be noted that since Nick Saban's been at Alabama, Texas has only developed one offensive lineman that has played in the NFL during that time, whereas Alabama's developed over 20. And offensive line has to obviously be a critical area that needs improvement. And also from a recruiting standpoint, we all know now that high school players want to know, in regard to each program they're visiting, are you developing players that are going to the NFL and being successful there at my position?
Well, first of all, on Ewers, apparently, and I have not been down at practice, but apparently in the spring, he looked great. But as Darryl Royal once said, about potential means he hasn't done it yet. And I mean, he's still taking one snap under center as a college football player. And when he plays against Alabama in the third game of the season on September the 10th, he's still going to be a raw rookie. And I'm sure that Alabama's defense is just going to be all over him. And so as great as he may possibly be, he's gonna have his hands full and more when it comes to playing against playing against the Crimson Tide here on September the 10th. On the other hand, that's exactly how Sark has spent his recruiting season here in the last few months. He's been gobbling up offensive linemen, as he calls them, big humans. And so he's been getting big humans on both sides of the ball. And I think he understands that he's going to be in the SEC in 2 years, if not sooner. And so that's the way the ball is played over there, and that's what he needs. And I mean, he's been getting them from everywhere. And and the other thing he's been saying to these kids, and he's been saying, look, I'm going to be here for a while too. So don't be thinking that I'm going to be run out of here in a year or two. And so I think he wouldn't say that unless he knew that was true. And so we'll just see how it works out. But I think he's trying to follow the Saban model as much as he can. The one thing that I've noticed though, and just looking around at, watching Saban, last week too, is I sometimes wonder if Sark is not a get in your grill guy. And maybe he's going to leave that to his assistant coaches to do that. Sometimes I'd really like to see him just get in people's grill. He seems to be kind of, he's very soft spoken, which is okay. That's fine. But he just doesn't seem to bring the wrath or the fear of the wrath like Saban does. See that when he was at Alabama?
No. Hey, let me say this, Ken.
Oh, you sure did.
Yeah, you did. I thought he was intense, but let's go back to something you said about he's got to go get the big humans on the offensive line, and you hear it, you see it a lot now. A bunch of soft kids, and you hear complaints about it among high school coaches in Texas. All the hurry up, no huddle, all the 7-on-7s. It's all about the skill players. The wide receivers are the prima donnas. The running backs used to be the stars. Now it's the wide receivers. And I just keep thinking about Antonio Brown. What a jerk. I wouldn't want him anywhere near my team. I know he's a hell of a player, but he'll ruin your locker room. And so you've got to develop that tough alpha male culture. Brian Harson's got to do that at Auburn. He inherited the offensive players, especially the linemen that Gus had, make them leaner to run the hurry up, no huddle. Well, Gus, they changed the substitution rules 5 years ago, and you didn't change with them. And then you had offensive linemen that couldn't line up, knock people off the line of scrimmage on 4th and 1 and for 4th and inches in multiple games. That's what Texas has to do. They've got to get more physical. And I'm with you, Ken. And you want to coach, you better be tough. I'm not saying go flying off the handle, because then the guys will tune you out. But it starts with the head coach. You can't assign being a hard ass to your assistant coaches. It has to start with you. You got to be level-headed, but you got to be firm, and you got to be tough, and you got to instill that in your players when you are recruiting them, not when they get to campus, but when you're recruiting them. Because if they show up, it's kind of like, anything else. You got to prepare people and give them expectations of what you expect from them. As soon as they sign with you in December or February, you need to be sending them the workouts that they need to be doing. Because if they just show up for the summer sessions, looking like Lumpy Rutherford from Leave It to Beaver, rest his soul, it's going to be a miserable time there. But that's what they do now. They bring you in for those 2 5-week sessions. But Texas is going to go from playing where in the Big 12, Ken, it's about the edge rushers. In the SEC, it's about the whole front seven, and the elite teams in the SEC are 2 and 3 deep on the front seven. That's where Texas has to make the most strides in recruiting. Sarkisian, he is soft-spoken, I don't know how much that helps him or not, but there'll be a public grilling at 11 a.m. It's going to be 170 degrees in Austin when Alabama comes down there, but it's hot in Tuscaloosa too. And you're going to see a very physical and talented Alabama team go up against Texas. It's not like Texas is going to lay down. I just think that they're a lot further along on the talent, in recruiting. But it'll be look, Texas, Alabama, that's as attractive as it gets in a matchup.
Well, I think it's going to be great. And, the other thing that I think is great too is that Texas and Oklahoma have already said that they're going to keep their annual rivalry in the SEC as a conference game, like in the Big 12.
Yeah.
And they're going to still play it in the Cotton Bowl in Dallas, because that is just I've been to that game every year since 1978. So I don't want to somehow let you know my age, but
awesome.
That is like my Christmas. That is like my Christmas weekend, Texas OU weekend, and I'm so glad they're gonna keep that and not try to mess with that or try to make that part of a rotation or anything. And I was really glad that like Arkansas said that they want to make Texas an annual game and Oklahoma an annual game. And I think that's the other thing I thought was very interesting about SEC Media Days last week, is that a lot of these coaches want to make revive these rivalries from the old Southwest Conference days or from the old Big 8 days, Missouri, Oklahoma. And I think those will be great for college football.
Oh, no doubt about it. Look, Ken, we are Carol Burnett's out there saying we've had a great time so long together today, sidelines, but we've run out of time, but we got to get you back on soon. You are look, we got 3 themes on Sidelines: history, traditions, and heroes. As Haywood Harris, former sports information director at Tennessee, said so eloquently, tradition never graduates. Hey, funnel cakes, French fries, turkey legs, cotton candy, and cold beers, the Texas State Fair. Long live the Red River rivalry. I am with you.
Amen. Amen.
I love this, but tell people how they can follow you, and we're looking forward to getting you back on again here in the next couple of weeks. This has been great stuff.
Well, it's been great stuff talking to you, too. It was great meeting you last week, and you can follow me on Twitter at Texas Six-Man Ken, and really looking forward to the Big 12 season and the SEC and just, Football Writers of America. We cover the entire college football landscape. And of course we put out, we work on an All-American team. We work on the Outland Trophy and the Nagurski Trophy, the Eddie Robinson Coach of the Year Award. So we're looking at everything. And so I'll be happy to talk to you anytime about any of those things.
You'll be getting a call next week. Hey, look, and remember, everybody, been a great show. Go to 680thefan.com, the podcast park in Atlanta. Expecting over 4.3 million visitors there this year. So we'll be there right after this. Chuck Oliver, Dan Matthews, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Monday through Friday, Southern Sports Today. Check them out after you turn us off. It's been a great show. Remember, we most often see the face of Christ in the least among us. And don't forget, you live in the greatest country in the world. Go out and help people with the expectation of getting nothing in return. You'll be richer for it. We're out of here. See you tomorrow.